Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 74 of the Whitey Wils Sports Show. Today is Mother's Day, Sunday, May 14th, 2023, and this is a special one. We've got published author and maybe not quite a New York Times bestseller just
I
yet,
checked the list today. He wasn't on there.
but working our way up there. We've got Larry Wilson back on the show. Larry was the very first guest on the Whitey Wils Show, like what, a year and a half ago, and he's been busy since then. He's been busy writing some stuff down, and his book, 41 Seasons, 41 Stories, Tales of a Radio Sports Announcer, it's been published, and we thought with that occasion on mind, we'd get him on here. So Larry, thanks very much for joining us today.
Hey, no problem. It's an all new adventure for me, but you might tell the folks you do have an autographed copy.
I do. It's
It didn't count because you hadn't taken your meds when you signed that.
well, it's a good autograph and a nice little note in it, regardless of meds or anything else. I will cherish it and put it in I have a pretty limited bookcase, I have to admit. I don't have a lot there, but it's going to be in there. So yeah, Mike.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
We now have a tie for most guest appearances.
That's right.
He has now tied the esteemed Matt Robinson, and I appreciate you guys running without me last week. That was good. You guys did a good job. And by the way, that was my idea. Someone thought, Whitey and Matt are trying to take over the Whitey and Wils Show. That's not the case. But no, and it was good. I listened to it. May have dozed off at one point, but I did listen.
Well, I won't take it personally, but yeah, I mean, Larry, you've been on. You and Greg came on I don't know, a year or so ago. And I would imagine, I don't remember every story that was shared during that interview, but probably one or two of those are probably mentioned in your book. So why don't you just start off by giving us the sales pitch on 41 Seasons, 41 Stories. What's it all about?
Well, the book, first of all, let's back up to my granddaughter.
Okay.
And she got me started on writing a book, not this book, but another book about. She said, "Grandpa, you're always telling stories about when you were a kid, growing up on the farm, etc., and your background." I said, "Why don't you write a book?" Well, she got into Storyworth. Someone at her school told her about the app Storyworth or the website Storyworth. She looked it over and said, "This is just what we need." So she became a member of Storyworth so I could write a book. And Storyworth gives you a weekly idea on a story to write about. What was your first car? What was your first date? Tell us about your mother. Tell us about your father. They give you an idea every Monday morning on the story to write for that week. So I did a few of those, and then I went out on my own thinking of ideas to write. And it was just strictly a book for a Christmas gift for her dad and my wife and my daughter Julie. So it was just 3 copies though, so that makes it very valuable. Of course, there's only 3 out there.
And on Amazon so far, I haven't got any replies.
And right now, it's being passed around to all family members to read. And believe it or not, it too had about 40 or 45 stories in it. So ideas come to me pretty easily, apparently, or something. But anyway, I ended up writing that book. And we kept it a surprise from Mike and my daughter, and my wife knew about it, but it was a surprise for a Christmas gift this past Christmas. And so Mike finagled around and somehow found out the book had been written.
Oh,
no?
Mike was trying to find out how you could write a sports book and was having dinner with Craig and Tessie Cabas here and asked Craig, "Do you know a place where it's easy for a person to start writing a book?" And he says, "Yeah, Storyworth." And Morgan gets up and leaves the table. And I thought she was kind of being rude to our guests. Well, she can't keep very many secrets. So she left because she would crack and tell me that this other book was already published And then the smart people in the room, my Larry and my wife and my daughter, decide to give me my book that night, like right before Thanksgiving, because they couldn't keep it a secret anymore. So, and then I said, hey, why don't you write a sports book? So that's where that came from. I wasn't getting nosy. I was trying to promote the sports book. Lo and behold, this other book was already written.
So the idea kind of settled in, and I said, well, I've told a lot of stories. Many people have heard them already. Maybe they don't want to hear them again. And Mike said, well, why don't you just jot down some ideas? So I got a legal pad and I just started writing down ideas in code, more or less, that would remind me of the story. And the fact is, both books I've written, neither one had any notes. It all came out of here. I didn't have any notes written down. All I had was a story idea. And then I just sit down to the typewriter and go from there.
Yeah.
So I started jotting down ideas for the book or items for the book. And one story led to another, and one story led to another. And then I remembered, oh, yeah, we did this and this happened. And first thing you know, Whitey, I had probably 35 ideas written down on a legal pad for stories. And I thought, wow. And then I thought, hey, 41 seasons I broadcast. I started figuring up. I said, 41 seasons, 41 stories. I can come up with some more. And that's how the title came about.
Yep.
For a title. And I ended up with, if you take them individually, there's probably 48 or 49 different stories in the book. Some of them are condensed into one idea, but they just kept coming, the ideas, and I just kept writing. And I'd sit down some days and write 2 and 3 stories at a time. And then I might go a week and not write any. And then, hey, I better write this story. So we wanted to, our goal was to get it. I wrote the stories and I kind of got them all done. And it was, now what do I do? How in the world do I get this published? Who would know? And so I'm thinking about the printing companies in town in Effingham.
Mm-hmm.
Well, none of them do books from original. They do printing, but they don't do from the get-go.
Sure.
So I went and had a visit with Dan and Madonna Patton, Patton Printing. I said, if anybody can answer my question, they can. So I go there and I start talking to them, and they said, hey, we'll be glad to help you get your balloon up in the air here. So they started, they talked to a company in St. Louis who they'd done business with before. Well, that company didn't do it anymore. So he said, Dan Patton said, don't worry, I've got another company that will do it. I know about up by Springfield. We deal with, they're good people. They said, yeah, bring it on. We'll do it for you. And so that's how it started. And then you go through the rewrite and the proofing and everything, like being a writer yourself. You know, a lot goes in before you can say, okay, press the button, start printing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they said it would take, from the time I got it all written, they said 8 to 10 weeks because they were running behind. Well, my goal was to get it printed and available before the basketball season was over. My hope was to get it ready by postseason, high school postseason time. Sure. I thought that would be a good time to release the book, since a lot of the stories are basketball, some are football, some are just general things that happen, you know.
Yeah.
So by that way, then we got it all together, and then we wait and we wait and we wait. And 10 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks takes a long time when you're wanting your book to get published.
Sure.
But
yeah.
Anyway, they eventually got it out this past week, and boom.
Well, and let me tell you something. I got my hands on my copy Friday night, and I had a busy day yesterday, but I thought it'd be kind of nice to actually have read the whole thing before we talk today. But it's a real quick read, you know, and especially I think if you're interested, you know, if you're a person that's from around here and you kind of already know who some of these people are, which you know, I think most people who follow sports around here, a lot of the names that you mentioned in the book, they're going to be familiar. Those are going to be characters that they've heard of before. You can go right through it, and it's a really, I think I said it was a breezy read when I wrote about it, and I think that's a pretty good way of putting it. Like it's a good way to spend an afternoon. So I really did enjoy it.
I appreciated your review. I've got a couple other people I want to talk to, and I want them to read it and just review it, good or bad. I'd like to have some feedback on it, you know?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, especially people. especially people who are nostalgic about
Yeah.
the 80s basketball teams at Effingham High School, the Mitch Arnold, Uwe Blob teams. Those are, there's several stories revolve around that, and I think those are people who are around for that stuff are going to they're really going to be like, oh gosh, I remember when that happened.
People may not realize it. Mike did because he was in school at the time, but the Uwe Blob era in Effingham set basketball, high school basketball, on its ear in Illinois. You couldn't go anywhere in the state of Illinois and they didn't know about Uwe Blob and Effingham. And the fact that, they got all the way to the state tournament made the story even greater than it was.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And to this day, it's 40 years later, whatever, and people in Effingham still, talk about that. There's still kind of a shorthand with it. You don't have to give the whole story to know what you're talking about. You just say Uwe and they know exactly who you're talking about. It's sort of it's just woven into Effingham sports history at this point.
It's amazing how many things happen. Greg Sapp's a big part of the book because Greg and I worked together for 30 some years. He'd have to be a part of it. And so many of the stories involved what happened when we were together, going to or coming from games or situations that arose while we were working together as a team on the radio. And hey, believe it or not, we used to do, when we did the morning show, over on, when we moved to the X and did the morning show.
Yep.
Most people don't know because they don't realize that their stations do ratings, things like this, to see how popular they are in the community. But the ratings for the morning show and our broadcasts were just unreal. The ratings were unreal for the so we worked pretty good as a team, both on the morning show and basketball. And so therefore a lot of the stories concern our adventures out on the road.
Well, having worked with Greg myself, for a long time now, I can kind of read some of those stories and sort of imagine, what you were seeing and what you were describing, because I mean, there was the one where you were told you could have 2 spots in the press box, and there was a third person there helping you set up, and somebody came in. I mean,
which was Greg was the third wheel.
Yeah, we had a very similar situation arise in Mount Zion one time when we were doing a football game. Mike Mose, the athletic director there, actually told us, hey, we got a place, which, first of all, this never happens, but they're like, we got a place you could sit inside this time. And so, well, it wasn't inside, it was out on the balcony of their press box or something like that.
You can see inside.
Yeah. So we were setting up, and this gal comes in and starts giving us the stink eye and saying, well, I don't know. I'm the clock operator. I don't know how I'm supposed to see whenever you're all set up. And we were like, whoa, ma'am, we're just setting up. This is not where we're not going to be standing here the whole time, which Greg was trying to be polite and nice to her. And I kind of feel like sometimes that's my role in this, is that I don't have to be nice and polite. That's not my reputation necessarily. I can say, ma'am, calm down. Nobody's peeing in your Cheerios here. We will be out of the way by the time the game starts. Just relax.
Yeah. That's Mount Zion should have their own chapter in this book. That's
well, and I
don't get me started.
I certainly appreciated comments about the football accommodations in Paris too, because I've experienced that firsthand. And the bucket truck story was probably the highlight for me. Imagining Larry Wilson riding up the bucket, down and up the bucket to go visit the men's room. That's get the book though and read the whole story. But just there's some good ones. Whets your appetite a bit.
Now, Whitey, and we just found out, breaking news, little false advertisement.
What's that?
There's There's only actually 40 stories, because somehow we just found out from Mr. Hemingway himself, one of them did not get in the book. So we have someone will call and want like $1.12 back or 50 cents back because they're short a story.
So
Just saying.
that's what I think. I figured there was a lot left on the cutting room floor. I mean, were there some tough decisions to make there, Larry, as far as what to include and what not to include once you decided on that 41 number?
No, I actually I began to wonder if I was going to come up with 41 exactly, or they're near 41. And there was one story the one I wrote that somehow didn't get in the book, but I figure I can use that to tell people when I speak in public. I've got 3 or 4 engagements read. My secretary has me, my publicist has me booked for about 4 more interviews at various locations, and I'm on the radio tomorrow afternoon on the drive home.
Nice.
I'm speaking to Sunrise Rotary. I've got a meet and greet at the library. I've got a meet and greet at the radio station. We got a schedule, so there'll be plenty of times for me to tell other stories if they didn't make the book, I guess. I could tell one we talked about before we recorded.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I don't know why I didn't think of it. I think it's my advanced age, but I didn't think of this story until the book was published. And I suddenly remembered, boy, that would have made a great story to put in the book. It's when Effingham and St. Anthony played exhibition baseball game at Busch Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
This is back in Stadium 2, wouldn't it be, Mike? Busch Stadium 2.
It was on the AstroTurf.
It was on the AstroTurf, the old field. And Effingham and St. Anthony had, like many high schools in our area have done, get to play at Busch Stadium. They arrange games and they let them play like 5 hours before a scheduled game. And therefore, the high schools have to sell tickets to the real game that night. Sure. So the Cardinals end up making money out of the deal anyway. So Effingham and St. Anthony scheduled a game at Busch Stadium. Mike happened to be coaching, assistant coach under Dave Bartlett at St. Anthony. And Effingham and St. Anthony scheduled to play at Busch Stadium. So we said, hey, why don't we broadcast this game? Is there a possibility we can broadcast this game to the folks back home who can't get to the game or don't have a ticket to the Cardinal Padre game that night? So we ended up calling the Cardinals and talked to a real nice guy. And he said, sure, come on down. We'll find a spot for you to broadcast your game from. Okay. So we get to the stadium. We go in like the teams do. You go in through the front office and then they take you through the tunnels and get you out to the area. Well, the guy sent us, he said, go up to the press box area, 2 or 3 floors up. And he said, find a location up there to hook your phone line into. He said, there's plenty of places to hook up and just broadcast your game from there. He said, just don't go in Jack Buck's booth. It's clearly marked. You can't go in the Mike Shannon, Jack Buck radio booth. They don't mess with their equipment because they got a lot of stuff in there. Mm-hmm. So we go up and we're walking down the area there to try to find an open room to go in and broadcast. And hey, we find a door unlocked and we go in, we find a phone line. It was hot. We plugged in. We made our call back to the station. Everything was cool. And we're sitting there broadcasting. And about the second inning, the press box door opens that we're sitting in. Behind us, the door swings open. This guy walks in. We're on the air. He said, what in the hell are you doing in here? Well, Greg and I were scared to death because we thought we'd really been caught, or going to baseball jail or something.
That would be in the basement of Wrigley Field.
And the guy said, what the hell are you doing in there? I said, well, sir, we're broadcasting. Who gave you permission to be in here? Mr. So-and-so. Well, okay. Don't touch anything. That was his advice, to just don't touch anything in here. Okay, sir. We hunkered down and both of us just scared, about wet our pants because we thought we'd really done something bad. But I said, Greg, you know who that was? And of course, Greg and I both knew it was Jerry Coleman, the famed ex-Yankee, right? Didn't he play second base for the Yankees or shortstop?
This is
now you're talking to Google. Now you're talking to Google search now. Good Lord.
Jerry Coleman.
No, there was homework.
He played for the Yankees. Anyway, he was the lead radio announcer for the Padres who were playing that night against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And we were, I thought, Greg, that was Jerry Coleman. Now, Jerry Coleman was as revered in San Diego as an announcer as Jack Buck was in St. Louis. And Jerry Coleman was.
Maybe you just caught him on a bad day.
He played for the Yankees, was an all-star in 1950.
There you go.
Played second base.
There you go.
And I think, let me see. I'm trying to read. Wikipedia is never wrong. I thought somebody got fired and they made him the manager of the Padres at the end of the season.
Took him out of the booth.
Well, because he knew everything.
Yeah.
I can't find that to verify that. So,
but he used to. Now, Greg could tell this story. I don't remember exactly, but Jerry Coleman was broadcasting, and a guy hit a long fly ball to center field, and the center fielder ran into the wall. And Jerry Coleman said, "Oh, he hits the wall. He's lost the ball. He hit his head. It's off. It's rolling on the ground." He meant the baseball, but the way he said it, he pulled a Mike Shannon and he said, "Oh, his head's loose. It's on the ground." Greg could tell you the story exactly because he's quoted it to me many times.
Now, Sam Rickleman's name shows up in this book a time or two, and Sam's the guy I got to know a little toward the end of his time at the Effingham Daily News. But I'm just wondering, you kept things PG in this book, but I'm guessing that you probably could have bumped that rating up a couple steps if you put any direct quotes in there.
Oh my God. Yes. Certainly could have. Oh, he hated Pena and he hated Charleston. And he let you know about both of them. And
yes, he did.
I'm going, since this isn't radio or TV and the FCC don't care, I think I'll give you one quote from Sam.
Let's hear it. He
said, if God wanted to give the earth an enema, he'd stick it in Pena.
And Jerry Coleman did manage the Padres part of a season in 1980.
Well, there you go.
I knew that. Now, I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah.
In your 41 stories, there's nothing about my football prowess. I had 2 interceptions you announced. One each, 2 of my my junior and senior year. I thought at least, to get a mention on the dust cover or something.
Or I could have mentioned when you got hit at a freshman game in Hillsboro.
Yeah, about
so hard playing quarterback that your shoe came off and your helmet came off.
And my head probably was in it. I think that was pre-concussion protocol because I would probably still be on the disabled list today. All I remember, Whitey, is the next thing that happened was the official saying, "I think he just got the wind knocked out of him." Yeah, I got to the sidelines with only one shoe on, no mouthpiece. It broke off. That's how hard I went back and hit.
That's the default diagnosis, right? That's
the last football game my mother went to watch because she wouldn't watch me until senior night.
Yeah. Well, now listen, you got to write a prologue here. So if you wanted to mention any specific story, it seems to me I'm counting here. You had probably 6-7 more lines you could have worked it in.
I could have. And luckily they weren't broadcasting the game at T-Town when I fell down running the bases on the home run. See, that would have been an embarrassing broadcasting moment.
Yeah. I was there. We weren't broadcasting, you say?
No, you weren't broadcasting.
You hit the ball across Route 40.
Yes.
The old Kelch Field.
Old Kelch Field. So about where the people park by the grades, where the home plate's about where the batting barn is, was right in there.
But your ball.
So cleared the interstate, and I just.
No, not the interstate.
I'm sorry. Route 40.
Wait,
Route 40.
It's getting real deep in here now.
This was pre-steroid era. But I may or may not have had a wager with a teammate about getting a triple during the season. And as soon as I hit it all the thought through my head was, there's my triple. So I'm rounding second. I don't even know it. I'm going like, and I kind of cut second short. And when you start stumbling and you try to run out of the stumble, you get closer and closer to the ground. About shortstop position, I do a header, and my helmet, the bill of my helmet's like into my mouth, grinding in the dirt. I'm like, oh my God, I got to get up. But my legs weren't working. So I'm kind of trying to get up, and I look, and Max Wolf was the umpire on the bases. And I look up, and he's going like this. It was an automatic home run. It just cleared the road. I was worried about getting the triple.
It cleared the fence, Whitey.
There wasn't a fence.
No fence?
No.
I thought there was. Anyway, it went across
the road.
40. It went across Route 40, and it went on the other side into a international dealership of farm machinery.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be a farm dealership over there.
Mm-hmm.
It rolled under some farm equipment, and I don't know how long it took them to get it out of there, but anyway, fun part was he tripped and nosedived at shortstop.
And it was an automatic homer, which I didn't know.
And Mr. Rickelman had a ball the next day in the news.
Yeah, his whole story wasn't about us ending T-Town's 30-some straight game winning streak. It was about the Effingham's likable first baseman's exploits on the bases. I still have it somewhere tucked away safely. But Whitey, you get up and you kind of get an attaboy from your coach at third. And you think, today you see a kid hit a home run and his teammates are all there to meet him at home plate. Mine are all laying on the ground laughing.
Well, and as far as Sam, kind of maybe poking you a little bit in the paper the next day, what they always told me about him, because the first time I ever met him, he gave me a pretty good rash of shit, and they told me afterwards, they're like, that's how he likes you. If he doesn't like you, he won't even speak to you. So consider yourself fortunate that he gave you a hard time. So
yeah, he makes a few stories in there, and yeah, Dad talking about. I mean, I rode with those guys, and I mentioned that in my preface. Riding with those guys, that was an education.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot.
Sam's mentioned in the book. I could have written things that you can't publish about, like Mike says. Anyway, that you don't print them, but they were fun things, and he didn't mean anything, and he was gentle. And sometimes I'd ask him for help when we'd be doing 3 games a night. I'd say, Sam, can you write me a 2-paragraph story about the game that you covered that I didn't, that I can put on the sports show in the morning? And he'd say, well, give me a copy of your damn book then, so I can write a story about the game I didn't go to. and I can get the stats out of your book, and I can conceive a story about your game. So I'd go by his house at 11 o'clock at night and drop my scorebook in his mailbox, and he'd write a story that early the next morning. Of course, he went to work at 5 in the morning, and then he'd have a nice story in the paper, but he wasn't even at the game. He used my book to get the story, put it together. Yeah. And then in the mailbox would be a nice 3-paragraph story about the St. Anthony game, which I couldn't do. I could have on the sports show. So we traded a lot like that. And he was, we had so much fun. It was just unbelievable. And riding to games together, like Mike said, we'd get telling stories and some of the things he would come up with. And it was just unbelievable. And I had so many people. The first story in the book is about all the people I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I left people out of probably that helped me sometime do a ball game. You guys both are mentioned there, and all the other people. And one of the first guys I worked with was Jack Hightower. And Jack was, I don't know how we got together, but Jack just said, hey, I can help you if you ever need it. And there's 2 or 3 stories about Jack in there. And people who are still old enough to remember Jack Hightower will remember what a great guy he was, and some of the silly stuff we did, and he's just one of the people I worked with. And I worked with Mike. Mike Repking was a young kid who I hired at the radio station, and Mike was very intelligent, and and I worked with him at the station. And we used to have he'd work Sunday mornings, and we used to have a 15-minute slot we had to fill with news and sports from 7:45 to 8 o'clock every Sunday morning. And Mike loved it because he could give the news and he could give the sports. So one morning I tune in and Mike's giving he's having to fill to stretch the 15 minutes, you know. So at the tail end, he's doing sports. Well, he got to the point where he was doing statistics and baseball stats. And Mike, that morning I listened, he said, well, let's take a look at the leading hitters in Major League Baseball. Okay. He said, well, Frank Robinson is leading the National League with a 347 average, and his brother Brooks is leading the American League.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I laughed. Mike, if you ever write a book, call it Frank Robinson and his brother Brooks.
They both ended up with the Orioles after that, too. So.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mike went on to join the Air Force. Mike became a jet pilot. Mike was a teacher and instructor and taught pilots in Saudi Arabia how to fly jet airplanes. He now lives
in the Middle East, doesn't he?
He lives in Greece. I saw his son the other day. His son wants a book to send to Mike in Greece.
And the response has been good. We talked about that a little before we started recording. You've been pretty happy with the initial response to the book now that's been available.
Oh, unbelievable. I can't believe, I told my wife, I said, I can't believe there's that many people want to read this book or even care about reading this book. And she said, Larry, you were on the radio for 44 years. People know you. People have listened to you for years. If they couldn't get to the game, they listened to the game, and they know you, and they believe what you wrote is true. And it is. Every word in the book is true. I didn't make anything up or stretch anything, you know. And she says they really believe in you, and they want to read it. And I said, well, okay, I hope. And from day one, and my son will verify this, I didn't want to make any money on this. It's not a plan to get rich, because you can't get rich selling a book for $20 then it costs about 15 or 16 to print. No, you're not going to get rich. And I'm not in it to make money. In fact, I've given some books to people who helped with this project. I gave them a book and said, here, this is complimentary. And so it's not to make money.
Yeah.
No, Dad, I did have one request though from somebody.
What was that?
Well, D. Mesner would like a book, but he wants you to come read it to him. He says he just likes to hear your voice. He says, if your dad would just read it to me.
I saw that on Facebook. D's quite a character. He
yeah.
But you know, without spoiling any of the stories, because I think people should buy a copy and read it themselves. But there is a story that revolves around the fact that, you know, somebody could recognize your voice, you know, that they knew who you were just by having listened to you. They'd never met you, but they heard your voice. And that is, I mean, that's the beauty of the medium, right? For radio, like people feel like they know you, even if they don't actually, just because they hear you every day.
Yeah. And Whitey, the story you're speaking of, we were going on a family vacation to Wisconsin Dells, I believe. And we stopped by this gentleman's house to meet him. Dad wanted us to meet him, and we got to meet him in person. So I do know that person exists.
Yep. That was a very cool one. So that's something people should look out for. And if people want a copy, there's a couple different ways they can go about that, right? How do people get it if they don't already have it?
Well, we've kind of pushed it hard on Facebook, but I don't want to put out a cell number on Facebook. I think that would just be an offering a disaster, but I will give my cell number on here. If you want to text me, it's 217-821-5289, and I can get you a copy. You know, we'll mail it to you. We charge you an extra $5 for postage and handling, and it's
And we lose money at that.
well, we make 35 cents because
Oh, do
it's $3.65 to mail, and it's about $1 for the envelopes I bought, $1 each. So, you know, we mail enough. We'll go to Homewood Grill on that.
But if people want to go over to the radio station, they
Yeah,
can
they can go to the radio station to get them. You can get in contact with me. I've had people come by here. I've already had 3 come by here and pick them up, 4 actually. Yeah, it's the radio station's got them. Patent Printing has them. Dad's going to have the signing at the library June 10th, I believe.
Okay.
10 to noon, yeah.
Yeah.
You can get them there. I've had people come to my house. I've got some people scheduled to come tomorrow to pick them up here at the house. So there's several ways to get it, but we'll be glad to mail it if you live away. I had a lady meet me last night and her husband from Greenup. They drove from Greenup to Effingham just to pick up a book, and on a Saturday night. And I said, "Hey, as long as you're in town, why don't you have supper at one of our fine eating establishments?" He said, "Hey, I've got a gift certificate in my billfold to Joe's Pizza. We're going to Joe's and eat supper." So you never know what's going to happen. And by the way, we haven't mentioned yet, there are pictures in the book, a lot of pictures.
Yes.
And I give all the credit in the world to Barb, who works at Patent Printing. She is absolutely the greatest at design and layout. She helped design the cover. And she took a lot of pictures from a book that my daughter made me when they roasted me back when I retired. I had a roast. And my daughter made a book from that roast and gave it to me later. And there's a lot of pictures in there. She took some of these pictures and adapted them to some of the stories in the book. So there are a lot of pictures in the book. One of my favorites when I'm with the 5 Cardinal legends and by the way, they all 5 are deceased now.
Yeah, I was struck by that when I read it because since Mike Shannon just recently passed away, he would have been the last man standing in that group of Cardinals dignitaries. Yeah. But that's a nice one. I mean, even if you're not a fan of the team, I mean, there's some names in there. You know, that's just a Hall of Fame grouping there that you're posed with.
I was very honored to be in that group. And then the year later, Greg and I went down, and Greg and I have a picture in there with Jack Buck. And again, and so, you know, there are pictures in the book, and a lot of them are self-explanatory. Barb did a great job of putting the pictures next to the story that involves the picture. So,
and some good old pictures of Greg Sapp too, which I always appreciate. Yeah, you know, like you could tell it's him, but you're like, has he got a wig on or what's he doing here?
It wasn't just a myth that he had here. There's here. My kids were a little concerned. They thought that was my senior picture because I didn't have any gray hair yet. So.
I'm always in those older pictures from the 70s and 80s, I'm always struck by the pants some of these guys are wearing too. You know, it was a different world back then with the patterns on the pants. I'm glad and you mentioned your roast in the book also, and I think I would have liked to have been there. You mentioned Arbories was part of the roast, and I would have liked to have heard what he had to say. I have a feeling, knowing him a little bit.
It was I got burnt pretty good. My mother was there, and she said, "Boy, they said some nasty things about you." But when I got up and it came my turn, I kind of returned fire, you know.
Sure.
I explained, she didn't understand how a roast works. And I said, well, after I explained it, she said, "Oh, well, then that wasn't so bad." So
well,
it was a good evening, Whitey. I'll tell you what, I had a lot of fun, and I think I took more return fire than I dished out, but that's all right.
Well, listen, I don't know, you know, you just you walk around with that target on you. What can I say? You know?
Yes.
Oh boy.
Whitey, I want you to notice I'm sitting in my man cave.
Right.
You probably noticed. You haven't been down here yet, but you're certainly invited to come, and there's a lot of stuff here I think you would enjoy. That's,
I'm sure,
part of the man cave here.
Whitey, and I'll tell you, one of the things about that, you know, the sheet Dad used when he broadcast games to keep running score of kids playing. He's got that sheet right there, he's got 98% of those on games he broadcast.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, he gave
Wow.
Leon Gobzinski one, possibly his last game.
I don't know about that.
Well, when I looked at the records, it could have been, but it was against Paris and Otho Tucker, and I had to pass along. Dad said, "Let Leon know I was impressed. He held Otho Tucker to 35 points." So,
And
yeah,
I met with Leon yesterday or Friday. I'm sorry. Yeah, Friday, and took his book to him that he wanted.
Mhm.
And he had that sheet on his desk. And he said, he explained to him about that game. Of course, he knew about that game. He gave me all the details. And he let me know he's writing a book.
Mhm.
Leon's got it about 75% complete. And what he does is he writes it as he goes, and it's all nice, neatly typed. So it'll be real simple to convert it into book form.
Mhm.
Some of the, you talk about a guy that's lived an adventure
Yeah.
in basketball all the way
Yeah,
from high school to pro to pro basketball. I mean, and overseas. And he's got all that in this book. It'll be a great read. He says, I hope it's not too long. I said, no, never too long. And he said, my goal is to get it finished before the end of the year, or at
Well,
least get it ready to be printed. So
yeah,
we
Leon told
talked to
us some
Leon.
stories when we had him on the show, and pretty interesting.
Yeah, and the thing is, he recalls it all with great detail. It's all, yeah, all at his beck and call. Which I don't know how people do that. I can't. I don't know. Like, in I haven't been around as long as some, but it gets pretty blurry for me. And but that's cool that you save all that stuff. There's probably some I wish I had done more of. I think I've. And what I noticed when you held up that score sheet, the same thing Greg still uses to this day. I mean, he uses the same thing to do the play-by-play, and I use the same thing whenever I get a chance to do it. So
I probably have close to 15 or 1600 of those in the basement, along with the score books.
yeah, which is it probably takes a little convincing, right? Because like I got my old score books from when I was at the Daily News, all my baseball score books, and they've been banished to a corner of the upstairs storage room. But
Yeah,
I got a feeling that if we ever started running out of room, that'd be like the first thing we'd have to talk about. It's like, do you really need a baseball scorebook from 2007? And I don't know. I'm not sure what my answer to that question would be.
Now, Whitey, one of the things Dad also has, he's got those preview articles Sam used to write.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got kind of spooked reading through one because the old nylon, rayon, whatever they were, coaching shorts guys used to wear. There's a picture of Mike McCollum in a pair of those tight maroon shorts. Yeah, it's right there. That's scary. That's scary. I'm telling you what.
I remember having to wear some of those type of shorts. My seventh grade basketball team, we had old hand-me-downs, okay, and everybody was so mortified by how much their legs were showing that they all wore spandex shorts underneath their basketball shorts just so we could cover a little leg up. It was a little different styles merging there, but I'm sure Mike McCollum probably made up for whatever embarrassment there was by the way he played on the court.
Well, that's when he was coaching.
Oh, when he was coaching,
he was worth watching.
yeah.
I found a folder down here in the basement. A couple of weeks ago, I was looking for something else, and I stumbled across a folder full of information that I had I'd forgot about.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, I wonder what's in here. And I started looking, and I found a resume that Chuck Bell had sent to St. Anthony when he applied for their head coaching job.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that. I'd forgotten Chuck was at Paris before he was at St. Anthony. And in his resume, he writes about the fact that he was a coach who named the Apollo Conference the Apollo Conference. They ran a contest to see what to name once they reorganized and needed a new name for the new conference. the coaches of that conference got together and they wanted them to select a name for the new conference. And he chose Apollo, and the coaches voted, and they voted Apollo. So Chuck Bell named the Apollo Conference the Apollo.
Well, and
And the Bellettes were named after him. So
that
he's
was
got
what I
his
was.
name out there twice.
That's what I was getting ready to say. That's something I learned. I have, in all these years, I have never known why they call them the Bellettes at St. Anthony.
He wanted to jazz up the home game, so he organized a dancing group, and they became, now they're state champions. I mean, it's one of the best dancing groups you'll see. I don't care how many high schools halftime shows you go to.
And if you listen to us do a St. Anthony game on the radio, you will hear the music in the background during the halftime show, because they crank that up loud enough for everybody within a 3-block radius to hear.
And why do you would be proud? Chuck Bell was his own sports information director. He would publish insert to put in the programs at home games, and they would have the most valuable information. And he would do that for every home game. He'd stick that sheet in there, and it would have scoring averages, shooting, statistics, more than you needed.
Well, and that's a pain. Let me tell you something. I try to make those up for us sometimes when we go and do, especially postseason games. You want to be able to really talk them up. But man, it takes time to come up with all that and present it in a fashion that's usable. So I got a lot of respect for that. I wish I would do that at Eastern if I got a chance to. You know, it seems like a really fun job, but I'm glad that sounds like it would have been pretty useful to a broadcaster. So that's awesome.
Speaking of Eastern and sports information, Dave Kidwell, is Dave still around?
He's not with the university, but he's still around, you know, like he still gets involved in stuff, you know. He's a real nice guy.
He was great. I mean, he was great to work with at super sectionals and things like that.
Yep. And you mentioned the Charleston Holiday Tournament in the book at one point, and about how they always got a little off schedule by the time the whole thing was said and done. But you know what? I missed that. I missed that tournament so much. And I missed the super sectional being at Eastern. Those are so many great local sports memories are tied to that gymnasium, as outdated as it kind of is now.
You know, why do you mention the super, and having been to multiple supers down at Carbondale, great facility, but it's too big.
No
atmosphere. Don't get the noise. You don't get the noise. There's no atmosphere. It's very stale.
It was,
and not because the teams there and the fans aren't into it. It's just so stale. It's so big.
Well, in the same way with the state tournament, and the way they did the tickets there, where you had to buy your seat and you could only sit in your seat, and some irritated looking usher was trying to keep people from mingling with people in other seats. Like, let everybody get close to the floor. You need some atmosphere for these. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime thing for these kids, and there's people spread all over the gym, and it's
noisier. It's sometimes noisier at a fresh soft game on a Saturday morning.
Yep.
Because you're so far away from everything, and you're right. That's an issue.
Maybe they anticipated more people than they got.
Could be.
There's less seats than there was back in the day, just because of when they've redone it, how they blew up the press area and the VIP area. I mean, I don't know. It's the interest for high school basketball has slid and needs to be brought back. It really has.
Especially since it can be watched, you know. I mean, I guess it could always be watched on TV, but I feel like maybe it's a little easier to do, you know, especially if you want to pay for it. You can watch it anywhere you are. I don't know. It's too bad, though, because I went to that semifinal game for the Shoes this year, and it would have just been nice for them to handle the logistics a little differently, but maybe there's still a work in progress because they've only recently gotten it back in Champaign. So
is that the game that wasn't on TV? The semifinal game?
Place game.
One of the Shoes games wasn't on.
Third place game.
Oh, it didn't make it like on the over the airwaves TV.
Yeah, the third place games I don't think were on TV. Yeah, and they don't open because they got to clear the gym, and then the doors are open, and it's hard. You got to hustle to get to your seat, and then there's 3 minutes to go in the warm up. So you know, it's Yeah, there's some logistical issues I think they need to clean up. Well, Pops, we've kept you pretty long, and we got some other stuff we got to get done and touch on a couple things. So appreciate you letting us take a little time out of your Sunday nap. I appreciate that.
No problem. I'm on my couch. I can lay down right here.
I know.
I can lay down, listen to the rest of the show.
There you go.
Yeah, again, there's the book, and go either get a hold of one of these guys to get a copy of it. Go over to Premier Broadcasting over there on Willow and Effingham, and
reach out through our Facebook page, the Whitey Wils page. I mean,
we'll
give it to you.
I'll put some info in the description today whenever I post this about how to get a hold of it. If you want a copy, we'll make sure that you get your hands on it.
Yep, you can get one.
Thank you. Right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All
Thanks,
right.
Pops.
All right. So Mike, you got some other stuff stuff.
Well, we'll talk about the City Series a little bit.
Yeah, let's. It was
I got a story to tell you before we get started, buddy.
Okay. Go ahead.
I was talking Thursday night. Talking to Larry McDevitt, Josh McDevitt's dad.
Yes,
he pitched a good game Thursday. I didn't even get to listen to it. I had things going on Thursday, so part of why I haven't been on here. So, he was telling me that a lot of scouts, a lot of pro scouts now following Josh every outing.
Sure,
and they were there that night, and he's got to know them. I mean, not know them, but see him, recognize him, the nod. They don't spend a lot of time obviously talking to Josh's parents, but a couple of them come up to Larry and Thursday night and said, "What in the hell is going on?" Larry goes, "What do you mean? What are all these people here for tonight?" Larry goes, "It's the City Series. This is a big deal." He says, "It's been this way for over 40 years." He goes, "Scouts go, this is incredible. We've never seen a crowd like this other than a big postseason game or in a state, atmosphere." And yeah.
Even some of those state tournament games were pretty sparsely.
Yeah. Thursday night I was out there. Crowd was great. Friday night I went back out again. Crowd was awesome. Yeah, it's amazing. It really is.
That's funny because every Effingham game that I have broadcast this spring, whenever I walk up to the field with like my backpack strapped to my back, and usually wearing a Braves hat too, which might be part of it. I'll have some random kid that's hanging around the field say, "Oh, are you a scout? Are you here to scout today?" And I'm like, no, just a radio guy. Nothing.
No, I don't know anything about baseball.
Yeah.
Braves fan.
Well,
I know there's nothing to talk about this year,
but the City Series was good. I thought that. I mean, I wasn't at the Wednesday game where McDevitt pitched well and Effingham won pretty handily, but I was there. This is the baseball side of things that we're talking about, of course. And then St. Anthony wins the following night it was a 4-0 shutout, I believe. Yeah. Hey, no. And then the Friday night game turned out to be not quite as entertaining as the first two, just flow. It was 10-2. St. Anthony won. It was one of those games that an offense like St. Anthony's, it was a tight zone, and their hitters are good enough that whenever they know that the pitch has to be basically like right down the middle to be a strike, they're gonna hurt you. And they did. They scored 5 runs in each of a couple of innings, and that was pretty much all she wrote. So it was, but I still think that by and large, both teams comported themselves pretty well, and it gives you a good idea that St. Anthony in particular could make a lot of noise in this postseason, and even Effingham, with the top 2 pitching that they have and some of the kids that they have out there on the field and in the lineup. I mean, they're going to challenge for a regional title. They're going to be a real handful.
Well, and the biggest thing with them is when you have that really good number one, I mean, okay, if he doesn't throw it, if you're in a semifinal, and I haven't looked at the 3A yet, I know it's out. I haven't looked at it yet. Do you, let's get there and then save Josh for that? That's a tough thing for Curran to come up with when you've got one real dominant pitcher, which game's he going to pitch? So while you're perusing, I can tell you're perusing right now, Whitey.
Yeah, I am.
I actually, this winter, went to the library. Dan Wortman and I, who were both participants in the very first city series, okay?
Mhm.
He was on the losing end of the city series with the St. Anthony Bulldogs, and I was on the Effingham sweeping part,
He says with
winning
emphasis.
side.
Yes, he says pointedly.
Yeah, and we this is talked about all the time, but I knew all three games were close. I did not realize the first game was Thursday night, and then we played the doubleheader Friday. Didn't know that. Effingham won the first game 4-3. We scored a run in the top of the ninth to win 4-3. Okay.
Okay.
Then you come back the next night and you have a doubleheader. And I'm pretty sure both games were 1-run games. And I printed this, but it was it wasn't easy to read either way. But we won 9-8 and then 4-2 on the doubleheader. And yeah, I'd have to have a magnifying glass or something. But yeah, there was, it's funny. I was reading through here and I pretty well knew all of our, but there was people who were playing for St. Anthony at the time. I thought, I didn't know they played in the city series because they, just some people like Chris Custer, Chris Custer of the Christmas tournament fame and fortune. Oh yeah, he's a good attorney too, but he was a youngster playing on that poor St. Anthony team. Craig Cabas was a youngster, and there's some young kids who played there, but it was a great. I just remember, I thought it was all 1-run games, and it wasn't. It was a 4-3, a 9-8, and a 4-2. So, and that's before the pitch count. So there were some guys who were used. There were guys who were used every game.
Well, and that was one thing that really worked in Effingham's favor this week was that, first of all, they played Taylorville in their Apollo Conference doubleheader the weekend before the City Series, and Taylorville is the bottom of the Apollo Conference. It's been a tough year for them. A couple of run rule games where you could spread your pitching out a little bit more and not use anybody too much. And then they didn't have a conference game or any game at all on Saturday. So you didn't have to save any bullets. You could use your top two starters in the first two games like they did. They still had to kind of piece things together a little bit in the third game and give some guys some innings that, hadn't necessarily pitched a ton this year. But, it worked out well for them to make those, especially those first two games, pretty competitive. And I was looking at Effingham's, they're playing their regional in Olney, and they're the second seeded team in there. As far as they're the third seed in their sectional, but
who's the one seed in the regional?
Marion. So Marion will play either Olney or Mattoon. Effingham will play Charleston in the other semifinal. So
that's the thing. Does Curran roll the dice and throw his number 2?
I think I would. I mean, I don't know. That's always the quandary, isn't it? Because you don't want to.
Josh McDevitt that I've only seen him once this year, but the one I've read his stats every game out.
Right.
He's going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Do you save him and he's your trump card in a regional championship where you're the lower seed, but you know what? He's as good as any pitcher that's probably in that sectional, I would have to imagine.
In a 1-game series, it's just a 1 game of that whole complex, and you knew it was just a 1-game shot. I doubt they're the 3 seed.
Yeah, for sure. But of course, the converse to that argument is you don't use them,
and you don't get there.
then you lost a regional without using your best. He's Craig Kimbrell standing out in the bullpen wondering why Freddie Gonzalez never put him in the game. You know what I'm saying? Nobody probably watching this knows what
These
moment.
Braves flashbacks are killing you, Whitey.
But it's burned into my brain. So that's
all right, Whitey. I'm going to tell you something. Here's how the game has changed because of the pitch count. And I know it's a good thing, but that 9-inning game between Effingham and St. Anthony in the City
I think
Series,
they pitched all 9 innings for one of those teams.
Paul Stevens went 9 innings for St. Anthony, gave up 4 runs on 8 hits. Paul was a hell of a pitcher. Ended up pitching for Milliken. He's like he's one of the top 2 or 3 legal counsel with AT&T today. PJ could throw it. And he was only either a junior or a sophomore. The same kid for Effingham got the win in all 3 games.
Yeah.
All in relief.
Yeah, but still, you still wouldn't even see that. You still wouldn't see that today either, for better or worse.
Yeah,
so.
No, I think it's I think he threw 5 innings relief the first game, and then games 2 and 3. It's so hard to read. But St. Anthony used one pitcher in every game.
Yep.
He did not have a bullpen. And the Hearts used 1, 2, 3, 4. We used 4 different pitchers in 3 games. They used 3.
Yeah,
we used at least 2 in there, but the Sandler kid pitched every game. Brockett pitched 2. Johnson pitched 2. And Rich Eggemeyer pitched. And those are our 4 kids that threw. And we just, we had a couple other kids that could throw, but not very many.
Yeah. Yep.
It was, you just didn't have to have as many pitchers because number 1, you didn't have the pitch count. Number 2, you didn't play quite as many games.
Yeah, you did
not play 30 games.
Nope. Not. I mean, that's even when I was in school, and of course this is 20 years ago now, but even then, the schedules have gotten more aggressive. People, and I guess also people have done work on their fields. You don't have near as many games rained out, weathered out. People can get their fields playable. They have the resources to improve their playing surfaces and their fields and their facilities so that they're not as susceptible to rain, but also they have the equipment to where if it rains in the morning, well, we've got tarps on the mound and the plate. We've got a tractor we can drag the field with. We've got there's a few factors at play there. So anyway, and as far as what St. Anthony's got in the postseason, we don't need to go back over that again. You can watch last week's show. Matt Robinson and I talked all about it. Nothing's changed. Their regional, the 1A and 2A baseball and softball regionals begin this week. And if you want the scoop on that, you can watch last week's show. But then the City Softball Series, St. Anthony swept that. It was, and again, St. Anthony won all 3 games, but only really dominated one of them. They won the middle game. I think 7-0 was the score there. Lucy Fearday threw a shutout in that one.
The other 2 games were pretty well. First one was a 1-run game, wasn't it? 5-4.
Yeah, 5-4 the first one. It was touch and go the whole way. The second one ended up being a little more lopsided in St. Anthony's favor, and I think 10-4, 9-4, something like that. But it was 2-0 Effingham after 4 innings, and then St. Anthony just
didn't they score most of the runs in the 6th, bunch of runs in the 6th or something?
Yeah, they scored all. They did all their scoring in the 5th, 6th, and 7th innings. So they finally the Armstrong girl, Natalie Armstrong, pitched all 3 games for Effingham. She's a freshman, and you see, and I even talked to Lucy about this at my daughter's hitting and pitching lesson yesterday. She just said, you see the same pitcher 3 days in a row, you're going to start to get a feel for her a little bit.
Sure you are.
And they finally just got really aggressive the 3rd time through their order and started swinging at first pitches a lot because she was around the plate and up in the zone a little bit, and they started hitting her around a little bit. But really, it was a competitive game. And Effingham's got a nice. They're a fairly young team. And they can hit the ball real well. And as the Armstrong girl throws more, and maybe if the Altoff girl, Sage couldn't pitch this year because of some arm troubles, but maybe if she's able to come back and as a junior next year, you can maybe spread the pitching out a little bit amongst the two of them. They could Effingham's going to be good, and while the rest of the Apollo, I was talking to Jerry Trigg about this a little bit. Most of the other really good teams in the Apollo, they're losing some really key kids, and not that
Right.
Effingham.
They should be one of the top. They'll be a top tier team in the Apollo.
I think that's the hope. Yes, that Effingham will have losses because every team has graduation losses,
Sure,
but
sure.
it shouldn't hit them as bad as maybe some others. So they should be pretty solid. So they'll and if you indulge me for a second, I can look up what Effingham's softball team has got is going to be doing. They're going to the Centralia regional. They got to go a little bit further than the baseball team does, but they're in the same boat. They're the 3 seed in the sectional, but the 2nd seed in their regional. They'll play Mattoon in their opener, which is a semifinal, and then Charleston, which is the 2 seed in the sectional, but the top seed in the regional. They'll play either Centralia or Olney in a semi. So if Effingham can get a win over Mattoon, then they would play in a regional championship game, probably against Charleston, but who knows? I know that when Effingham and Mattoon played previously this year, Effingham won a couple of really high-scoring games. Jerry said that they were both walk-off wins, actually. They were both
right. So that would be a tough game for them.
Yeah,
and absolutely. You mentioned Centralia. I had a bad flashback, Whitey, because I remember watching Effingham play Centralia in the girls' regional championship game at Effingham, and Hope Collier was playing, and I think she was still pitching at the time. Yeah. Or the Armstrong girl was having a pitch, but she had a home run the first inning, 1-0, and then Centralia turned into the 27 Yankees, and they looked like the 27 Yankees. Yeah. They had probably 3 girls who were 5'11" and a solid 5'11", and they hit at least 5, if not 6 home runs. And none of them were cheap. We were sitting out behind left field fence. We quit going after them because it was too far to walk to go get them. Yeah. We let the kids go get them.
And again, Matt and I touched on the St. Anthony softball team last week, but just seeing them 2 days in a row, and just having seen them more than anybody else in the area, right? It really feels like they're hitting a good stride at the right time. Like they had trouble getting games played early in the spring, but
2A, they still got a tough road. They still got to go through Tolono and St. Joe.
Yeah, no, it's any sectional matchup they run into is going to be a handful, but they're going to hit. It's just going to be a matter of limiting the opposing offense, I think. Right. And they did a pretty good job against an Effingham team that hits well of, keeping them, Lucy Fearday is she doesn't necessarily rack up the strikeouts.
Not overpowering,
but she moves the ball.
People. That's right. Yep. She keeps the ball in play. And their defense is usually pretty good. Yep. They sometimes can get a little leaky, but for the most part, they're pretty solid.
And again, they just got, I always go back to the Hatton girl hitting 8th in their lineup, and she's a big, tall, left-handed swinger that I've seen her hit a home run in a game. She about hit a home run in a City Series game. For goodness sake, toward the end of the 3rd game, Lainey Coffin, who hadn't even started but was being hit for, I think they gave her an at-bat.
Yeah, she hit a homer. Yeah,
she responded by sending one over the left field fence. So they're just embarrassingly deep.
It's similar to the St. Anthony boys team when you have Will Haney and Ryan Schmidt hitting 8 and 9. Holy smokes!
Yeah,
they're solid. There's no out in that lineup.
Yeah,
all right, Whitey. Go ahead.
Go for it. I just want to say.
I was going to say let's jump while I got them pulled up so we can get this all wrapped up here.
Yes,
I have the 1A and 2A junior high track because we have some kids to applaud here.
Sure.
And I'm looking at 7 1A boys. And we'll expand our area just a touch. Newton St. Thomas got 2nd, Neoga 3rd.
Yeah.
In the hunt for winning state, and I just got champions. Garrett Ballinger won the 110 hurdles for Neoga.
That's a state record, by the way.
Was that state record?
Uh-huh.
Quincy Fulton from Newton St. Thomas won the 100 and 200, and going to be a nice running back for the Newton Eagles. If he plays football. I had someone from Newton tell me he's not sure he wants to play football. I don't know. I'm just telling you. Neoga pole vault, Grady Harmon, and this is like pole vault university here between, I think, the McWhorters and the Mimosers have both trained a lot of kids to pole vault in the area, which it's incredible how many state champs we have. So that was boys 7-1A, boys 8-1A. If my handy dandy iPad will work. Come on.
Hey, one note, the Harmon kid that you mentioned, Grady, his dad, Kevin, is the superintendent in Neoga.
Okay.
That's why I've been running my daughter's softball practices pretty much exclusively for the last 3 weeks because Kevin's always, he's our head coach, but he's always chasing Grady to a track meet. So,
okay.
So I've been having to fill those.
8-1A.
Yep.
Second place, Effingham Sacred Heart. And third place, Single St. Michael's.
Nice.
Pretty good representation. Pole vault, Bryce Nieberge. Single St. Michael, pole vault champ. I think his older brothers neither one pole vaulted. So Bryce probably the toughest one of the three because I don't think Zach does. And I don't think Max did. So I don't know. I'll get feedback on that though. And then double winner from Sacred Heart, Jude Traub won both the shot and disc.
Okay.
Jude Traub did not bring home the most medals of a local kid though. I'd say that's my tease, Whitey. How's that for a tease?
All right.
Okay, boys 7-2A. And then I'll jump to the girls' side here. State champ, Altamont. Congratulations. And let's see. Cooper McManaway won the 400. 56-12. That's pretty good time for a seventh grader.
Yes.
And Cooper McManaway won the shot. You don't see that double up very often, a shot and a
basically a sprint race.
Yeah, on the 400. Okay, whoops. 8-2A. I hit the wrong button. 8-2A. St. Anthony was 7th. And let's see if we had any state champs in 8-2A. We did not. Girls side, 7-1A. No top threes as a team. Individuals, none. And I'm going to jump to girls 8-1A. Isabella Keller won the 800, 221, and the 1600 and 505. Wonder where she gets that. Allie Coleman from St. Michael won the shot. Isabella runs for Sacred Heart, by the way. And Allie Coleman won the shot. So good things there. Girls 8-2A. St. Anthony got 4th. And Nora Trupiano, pole vault champ, 2 years in a row.
Nice.
For St. Anthony. That's Manny's daughter again. I know Manny wasn't a pole vaulter, so that's amazing. And she also runs a 1600. That's not a good, you don't see that very often. I saved this one for last, Whitey.
Save it for last.
Girls 7-2A. State champ, Effingham St. Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good. In the 100, Reese Haney, Effingham St. Anthony.
Okay.
In the 200, Reese Haney, Effingham St. Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
In the 400, Reese Haney, Effingham St. Anthony.
What?
In the long jump, Reese Haney, Effingham St. Anthony. Now, she long jumped 16:11 and a half. When I broke it down to see results for all the top finishers, she won the long jump by over a foot. And I think the high school record at St. Anthony girls high school records maybe 17-2 or 3. I think Kim Richardson may still hold it. Don't quote me on that. That's pretty impressive to get those 4 wins. And, you know, Mike Haney, my former assistant coach, it's his granddaughter. So I know he didn't teach her anything about running fast.
Absolutely.
her mom runs a lot. She runs mostly distances. Kevin, he was quick on the floor. I didn't realize he was that fast, but that's impressive. And she's just now a seventh grader. She won several of these events last year as a sixth grader at the seventh grade meet too. We had at least one other area state champ. Edie Wittenberg won the 800. So good representation for the area in the 1 and 2A. We'll have 3 and 4A next week. So primarily we'll be checking on the T-Town and Effingham Central kids. But yeah, that's awesome.
And that's
great.
A lot of qualifiers too. I mean, we listed
tons of qualifiers. I can't go through all of them.
Oh yeah, it would take us
and the relays. I mean, but I was going through there and just looking at them, and very impressive. I see, I saw St. Anthony girls won the MTC meet a couple of weeks ago, and I know we got a lot of girls going to state. Caitlin Vollen over at T-Town has broke records a couple times this year. Yep. And I will tell you, I have a theory. Caitlin's an incredible athlete, very fast. She also works really, really hard in Chet Reeder's athletic PE class. She's probably doing more lifting than 10 years ago girls did for track. So, shout out there to, I've seen Chet's kids work in those classes, and they work. I mean, some of those kids work their tails off. So,
yeah,
there's some good representation there going to state. And I like to see that. I love track meets. The 4x4 is the greatest event ever at a track meet. Yeah. I used to love when Newton would be at a meet back in the day, because their whole team's on the infield running back and forth across the infield cheering on their kids. And I've seen some great, my youngest daughter ran the 4x4. That's a tough race. And the 800 is now, I think, the hardest race, because it is a 2-lap sprint. The 400, that's the hardest race. No, you got kids running the 800 now. Junior high boys were pushing right at flat 2 minutes. That's back-to-back 60 quarters.
That's the thing. I mean, even the mile is basically a sprint anymore.
It's getting there. You're exactly right.
And that's, when I always did the mile, and when I was in junior high track, and I, spoiler alert, washed out of track pretty quick, but I always ran the mile because there was a distance race. You didn't have to be fast.
You just had to not stop.
Right, but it's not like that anymore. It's like everything else. It's evolved, and the only thing I did was, just keep getting heavier. So it didn't work out too well for.
Now you run all the time.
Well, now I do, but there's my 9-minute miles that I run for exercise aren't going to be winning me any races anytime soon.
No, that's all right.
It's the state. I say this all the time. People probably have heard me say this before, but the state track meet is a really, boys or girls up at Charleston, it's really fun to just go take it in. And I think it's, for the kids that are participating, it's such a great thing too, because there are thousands of people there, and that's not a joke.
Yeah.
There are thousands of people there because all the teams and all the, a lot of the parents are there, and it's just an atmosphere that they don't get to experience any other time besides that. And especially when there's an exciting race or a record possibly going down, like there's a buzz, in the stadium there, and it's fun to be there and be a part of it.
Now, Whitey, next week for the girls have state track meet this coming weekend. Mm-hmm. The highs for Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Is it going to be hot?
74, 78, and 71. That's running weather.
It's not too bad. I will say
under 80.
Yeah, it's been worse. I mean, what was the year they pushed it? There was a year recently when they had to push it back a week or two because of all the seasons were smushed together because they were doing COVID stuff. And I remember it was real hot for the state.
Oh yeah, that was.
And that's when you see a lot of puking on the infield of the track. That's all I'm saying. Lots of kids literally running their guts out at state. But But yeah, that doesn't sound too bad. I will say that if there's a little humidity, that could be a bit
It
of a
doesn't look like it because the chances of rain are really low. So,
Well, I hope so.
20% chance, and it doesn't look windy. So
Yep,
that's
good.
amazing for this spring. So
Yep, good.
we
Well,
got a lot of postseason all starting this next week. A lot of postseason baseball, postseason softball, postseason track. Boys tennis will start their postseason run. Bass fishing will start their run here pretty soon. I see, and it's amazing because I think more often than not, the state bass fishing tournament gets canceled more than they get to have it because there's always bad weather down there on Lake Carlisle. And, nothing, you don't want to get any kid, struck in a boat by lightning.
No,
That's
that
really
would
put a
be
damper on your tournament.
that would be a bad deal. I think that's probably something we should try to avoid. All right. Hey, I got a
Oh, I do have one other thing I got to add. I
go
just thought about it. Did you see who was the NCAA baseball player of the week 2 weeks ago?
No.
Zach Lee.
Oh, yeah, I did see that. I did see.
You just said you didn't see it.
Somebody, maybe it was even you that tagged me.
I did. I told you.
Mhm.
Why don't you try to get me an email? I know his mom works at Eastern.
Yeah,
She's
Denise,
over in
I know
Old Main.
Denise.
Denise works at Eastern.
Uh-huh.
Get me. I know Denise. You get an email for me, and I'll see if we can't get Zach on. That's
Sure.
a tremendous accomplishment.
Sure, we can do that. I know. Yeah, I deal with Denise indirectly all the time. Admissions and marketing
Yeah.
very closely tied. So sure,
Well, yeah.
we can try that.
You just send her an email and include my name and say, hey, we would like to get him on for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Hey, has Mac made any more of those butterscotch cookies?
No, but we got 2 more plates in the freezer, and
I know some place that can take them.
well, see, they were initially tabbed for the Seth James household, but given what's been going on there, probably sending cookies over is not exactly the best thing to do. So we might be able to arrange for those to go elsewhere.
Because we will be supposedly we're going to be back to full strength here tomorrow. Have a full house.
Is that right?
That's the rumor.
Well, that would be certainly nice. It's been what, like a week and a half since you.
Oh, that's just 12 days here locally. That's not counting the other 6 days at St. John's. So yeah, we're almost touching on 3 weeks of,
Well,
less the 3 days here at home, which with me as a nurse, probably we're better
off in the hospital.
Facility. Yeah.
Well, as you can see, I've got a kindergartner that could be anywhere in the house, but decides that he needs to.
Well, he wants to see what's going on.
Yeah, so we can wrap it up, but yeah, we got plenty to talk about
Sounds
in
good.
weeks, and then listen, school's going to be out before too long, and we'll be.
Let me start talking about that Disney movie highlight of the Cardinals getting back in the playoffs.
I could see it happening with that division, quite honestly.
Hey, if we could face Kenley Jansen like every day, we could do it.
Kenley Jansen, whenever he blew that save the other night, it just brought back memories of the one game that we got to go to at Busch Stadium.
Oh, and he blew it for the Braves. We sat in that game. That game lasted forever. Did you see that?
Pain and
did you see what Contreras did to him yesterday?
No.
He didn't get in the box until the clock said 8 seconds.
Yeah. And then
Jansen, actually, he walked in the ninth, and Jansen only threw 2 pitches to him.
Yeah, I could do a whole show talking about how Wilson Contreras is getting thrown under the bus by pitchers.
Yeah, but he's catching Monday.
Well, yeah, I mean,
he needs to catch.
It's not Wilson Contreras' fault that Jack Flaherty can't throw 87 miles an hour. Okay?
No.
It's all so silly. It's all so silly. He's not a good catcher.
Jim Edmonds blasted the Cardinals pitching staff, and who was the White Sox catcher who the Cardinals got late?
AJ
Pierzynski. He blasted. He went after Flaherty mostly, and Edmonds went after the whole staff, mostly Flaherty.
I mean, listen.
And you know what AJ said? Hey, he puts down 2. You don't want to throw 2. You go.
They have these little things now. You just tell them what you want to throw.
Or you got a little thing in your belt. You call the game.
Yeah. I don't know. That's silly. I mean, listen, Wilson Contreras.
It's a weak excuse. Hey, you pay Contreras that money to have that bat in the catching position in the lineup.
Yeah, that's
put
the
him
thing.
As a DH or put him in the outfield.
you lose
Doesn't
that
do anything for
the
you.
positional advantage. Yeah, I mean,
No.
you don't get that advantage if Andrew Kinsner is bringing his 130 batting average into the lineup every day. And Andrew Kinsner is not a good defensive catcher either. Okay,
But the thing is, Contreras is starting to hit. His bat in the lineup's important. Couple guys, Arenado's starting to hit again. They're starting to hit a little bit. Let's get the lineup where it's supposed to be and see what happens.
Yep. All right.
We
Well,
go.
I don't really want them to turn around, but I kind of feel like there's plenty of time and it's a division where it can happen. So
It's a division that is available.
all right. Well, Mike, we'll talk to you again in a week.
See you, bud.
All right, later.